not going to be perfect. It definitely won't be pain-free. All this stuff starts with a lot of change. There is risk and pain tolerance that you have to build up, kind of callous yourself to, especially when we're going through the career changes and transitions that we go through consistently. So it's not that easy. It does lead to a lot of other stress in our life. So this is a way that we can kind of mitigate that by having a level playing field with all of us able to chat with each other and engage and talk about the things that we're going through, and also just to have accountability by doing this kind of thing. Hey TPN, it is I, Adam. Happy 2026. That's right, we find ourselves in another new year with all sorts of new challenges, transitions, and changes that I think many of us are looking forward to. Some of us are kind of having a little trepidation about them. And I figured it was time that we at TPN did something similar. So we decided to make some changes ourselves. And the first big one is we're changing the way we do things on a whole. We've established essentially themes. So, and I know maybe this sounds kind of goofy or whatever, but we're going to theme out each month. And you can find these in TPN Pro, not all of them, because we're going to do this kind of on a release basis and tease them out month to month. But by the end of the year, the goal is to build a better us as a network and as individuals. So after a lot of thinking and talking with a bunch of other pilots and the team and figuring out where we could best make some headway, we started with kind of something simple for January of 2026, and that's the theme of change. So you're going to notice some new things in Pro. There's going to be more engagement options and pieces in there as the year unfolds. So look for those. They're going to be new and consistent. One of the things that I have a big problem with, and for those of you who listen to the podcast, you know, consistency has not been the hallmark of this podcast, and that's something that podcasts need to have. So that's kind of one of the big changes I have looking forward. Another personal change that I'm doing, and something I have never done well, and I've just noticed this, so I'll give you a little caveat to all this. After I had my surgery on my shoulder, which I'm sure some of you know about just by listening to the pod, or who know me personally, or interact on TPN, I realized that I was really nervous after I had surgery because I didn't want to gain a ton of weight, sit around, and just kind of turn into a blob, because I knew the first 6 weeks were going to be very devoid of movement in a lot of ways. So I got heavily into tracking. But I didn't track a lot. All I did really was track on my Whoop strap, which I love, by the way. No affiliation with TPN. I wish we had one because it's been kind of my sleep tracker. It's been my fitness tracker, all that good stuff. Well, one thing I noticed about tracking was I couldn't do a lot of weightlifting and weight-bearing exercises, which I still am just starting to get back to. And hopefully I'll be at a point pretty soon here where I'll be good to go and rocking back at the airline. Well, anyways, what I started to do was I had a lot of time on the bike. So a lot of riding the bike, and not a fun outside bike, but a stationary bike, not going anywhere. They said, well, let's track my VO2 max because it's on this Whoop strap thing and see, you know, use that as a trend arrow. I don't know how accurate it is, but let's use it as a trend arrow to see if I'm going in the right direction. And then the other thing I tracked was my weight and like kind of calorie counting. Using a calorie counting app kind of thing, just to make sure I was keeping kind of in line with where I wanted to be. Now I know weight, for a lot of you fitness freaks out there, weight is not the like be all end all, but it's just a good starting spot when you're kind of in a position like that. So that's what I was doing. And I noticed that my weight was trending down, which was, I guess, a good thing. I mean, yeah, I was losing some muscle mass, of course, but my VO2 max was trending way up because I was really specific on kind of figuring out some details on that and how to project it out and really do a good job on just tracking that and then making sure that I looked back on it to see how I was improving. Lo and behold, my VO2 max went up. My weight stayed relatively the same or went down. I was tracking it really well. Like I could see my body changing in a good way. That was really exciting. And I thought, man, I need to do this more with every part of my life so I can be more consistent with TPN and all the people, all the members of the network, and deliver the best content value and engagement and bring this community together. And I realized that after a long kind of last 3 months of figuring all this stuff out, it was time to really focus on just this changes piece for January. So one of the big changes that we're going to do here is kind of the first thing that we're releasing into TPN Pro is this tactics, techniques, and procedures Thursday that we're going to do. And the first technique, or I guess tactic we're going to use is, and for those who don't know what tactics, techniques, procedures is, it's an Air Force thing. We call it TTPs. There's manuals and all this other stuff, but I figured it's kind of a corny, goofy name just to keep the memory flowing with that kind of stuff. We actually have a career corner with we call it our Wingman AI. It's just a link that you can click on, and it was built as on the ChatGPT server or ChatGPT foundation, where you can go and use the custom GPT that I built to help you kind of consolidate a lot of that career stuff. I go check it out. For those of you who are members of Pro, for those who are not, go to the pilotnetwork.com and you can join Pro that way and take a look, see if you like it. And if not, no harm, no foul. Just throwing that out there. There's your blurb, your paid advertisement. But what I wanted to talk about after that little piece was just how we're kind of looking at 2026, how we want to present it to everybody out there to kind of build that value. So we are all in a stage of change and transition normally throughout this career. I thought, you never really settle down. It's always moving all the way up to and including when you retire from the airlines. In fact, the podcast that I just did with Alex Tapia, we talk about not retiring from something, but retiring to something. And throughout these transitions and changes, we need a lot of support and help. So I figured it was time to really focus on that and kind of play around with that. And TPN, when it was built, was not built for any of this stuff. It was built because I was looking at a very specific item, which was my inability to get letters of recommendation or how to ask for them. And I realized that TPN really exists for pilots in motion, and not just moving airplanes, but moving throughout our careers. Our identities and the seasons change of our lives, and the decisions we make will vary based on those seasons. And kind of all this motion puts us in what, to me, it never really seems like a ending phase of motion and transition. So being in that stage of transition seemingly all the time, and these changes, if you will, it causes friction. It has for me in the past. I'm sure it's happening for a lot of you right now. And that friction can lead to kind of inefficiency in our actions. I know for me personally, it dealt with a lot of procrastination. And I used to think it was because I was afraid to fail. And I think it was because I was afraid to never really start, because I didn't want to do the work. I found it easier to sit and do nothing than to actually do something. And I thought, man, that is such a not great way to go about life. It's not what I want my kids to be like. It's not what I want people around me to do. And I realized that the progress that I had made in my past on doing certain things never happened by accident. There was always at least a deliberate goal. I don't necessarily know that I wouldn't necessarily say that I had a deliberate action plan to get to that goal a lot of times, but the times I did, man, it almost always paid off. And if it didn't pay off in achieving the goal, the lessons that I learned along the way were so deeply enriched by having an action plan and then realizing how, when I looked back and kind of debriefed myself, how I got there. What I'm saying is progress does not happen by accident. And it happens when attention is focused long enough on the matter to make that progress. So that is kind of why we're doing this 2026 theme building. And the first one we talked about is change. So let's talk about how these changes are going to look in Pro and how they might benefit all of us. So each 30 days, or roughly 30 days, it's basically going to be 12 calendar months, is going to be a new theme. Changes for January. It's going to create some clarity and a common language to align the conversations that we're already having. And the way I look at it is, this is the opportunity for us to, instead of just talking randomly and asking the same questions, and you can go to any forum and get that kind of stuff, is we don't have to do that anymore. We can slowly build up. Now, yes, if you have a specific question that's not out there or whatever, we can obviously hit that. But the idea here is to ask questions and generate engagement based on these themes. And within the theme is where we can talk about something specific, like if you have, I don't know, logbook questions in changes, like just starting a logbook, or I haven't kept one in a while. How do I recreate that and start that process, that transitional piece again, as it were. So this clarity and common language that we can use should help us stay a little bit more organized. It also allows all of us who are in different stages to talk about the same idea from different perspectives. And that truly is where learning compounds, right? Like for those of us who've been instructors for many years, we learn so much from our students if we just sit back and actually let those data points sink in and go, wow, they taught me probably more than I even taught them. They don't need to know that, but we know that. And it doesn't always have to be the senior person mentoring the junior person. It can sometimes be inverse, and a lot of times is. So a theme, though, is not a content dump. Think of it as kind of a challenge for the entire network that we need to complete, a productivity contest, if you will. So you can kind of take each one of these themes and make it your own. So if you're really organized, you might want to plug this in. If you're not, if you're just starting out on this path, kind of like some of us seem to do every year, this is kind of to help you move along that path. And yes, this can be specifically just for the job hunt or the career piece, but it can be for so much more on and off the flight deck. It's really about being flexible by design. So if you miss some time, or you're not engaging, and all that's fine. You don't necessarily have to do that. We want you to, because the community is based on engagement, because you can offer so much more as a collective than one or two of us can offer by being a sounding board. I liken it to, if you want to go and follow somebody on social media, you're an audience member, and audience members don't really get to be interactive all the time. A lot of times they do. Like Nick Fialka does a great job with that. He interacts with his audience all the time. But for the rest of us, a lot of times we're just consuming. This is a chance to produce something by asking a question or creating some of our own little mini engagement, and then building on that and helping ourselves while we help others. And a great way to do this is through the chapters and hanger fly stuff that we're building on throughout 2026. For those of you who are involved with that, you get it. For those who aren't, check it out. That is some really cool stuff that we're doing. And I can't wait. I'm hosting one in January again in Milwaukee. I'm really excited to get back out there and get a part of that. Anyways, I took us on a little bit of a tangent there. So I think in my mind, this approach is really going to work for us as pilots, because it kind of mirrors how we already operate. Think of it. We brief, we go execute, and then we debrief if we do that. Some of us, we have pre-briefs, and then we even have debrief post stuff that we do afterwards. It's the same ideas that the theme gives us some time to explore an idea, and then we can kind of pressure test some of those assumptions and theories and hypotheses out there. We can learn from each other, which to me is the most important part of what TPN does. And that's where I get the most out of it. And I'm sure a lot of other people do. And then when we're done, we can apply things selectively to our situation. We move on a little smarter than we were before, with a little bit more knowledge attached to our hip, and we can go conquer some of the stuff that may seem insurmountable, daunting, or something that we really wanted to do, or just a big change that we're undertaking in our life. So that's kind of sums a lot of that up. So for the year, some more of the kind of logistical stuff is each theme is going to shape kind of the entire TPN ecosystem, in my mind. At least we're going to try to do that. So Facebook group has its own kind of general way that it tends to go, but we'll drop a few nuggets in there now and again. The podcast is going to be heavily influenced by the themes. You'll see that. I'm going to try to drop little hints and nuggets about stuff that's coming up. We'll see if you catch those. There's going to be some definite change there, and I'm excited about it. Having a whole new production team out there. Shout out to Next Level University and Kevin Palmieri and his team. It's going to really be, it's going to have its biggest roots in TPN Pro. The discussions there are live sessions that we call TPN Insider, which are bi-weekly. I'd like to do them every week, but frankly, I just don't have the time to do that right now. Hoping that in the future I can. The events and the meetups, which I just mentioned, the chapters and the hanger flies, those are going to be thematically involved. Basically, it's a direction for every member of TPN volunteer and staff group to go out there and kind of execute based on one solid point of reference. The excitement I have for this, I hope, is coming through in my voice, because nothing exists in isolation, and this will ladder everything up. We'll keep building off of this stuff, which we haven't done in the past. It's always been kind of a little helter-skelter. So this is the plan. I know I'm putting a lot of big stuff, kind of a lot of impetus on me and some pressure, which is what I need. That's how I best operate, to kind of push this through and show that this is what the network really is. So getting down to kind of some granular stuff here is, nobody needs to keep up perfectly, just introducing ideas here and there that you may have. And those are basic questions about where you're at in your phase. This is good, but these are, it's just talk without execution. And it is our job as the TPN kind of caretakers to help us drive that execution of that, of the themes and the talking that we're doing. So within Pro is kind of going to be the real execution layer, and then it'll filter out. All right. So the big picture is super simple. I think I've hit it on enough, but it's not in 2026 that we're going to do more. We're going to do better on timing. We're going to make some better decisions. This is us as a collective. This is what I see. We're going to ask some more. We're going to ask more questions, because we're going to be more engaged. The themes are going to give us the structure to do all that. In fact, by the end I bet we can do a lot more of great things within the network for ourselves personally and for others by doing actually less work. By being more engaged, we'll actually create a little bit less work. It's kind of like, I always thought of it this way, or I was thinking of it this way when I was talking to one of our members at a TPN Insider just the other night. When you go in to your place of work, especially if you work in a military squadron, you have this plan, right, to get all this stuff done, and it never, ever happens the way you want it to go. I mean, maybe once in a while it does. But the reality is you go in and you basically put out fires every day, and then you go fly and you have more fires to put out, especially if you're like a section chief or you have some sort of job like director of operations or whatever, as you get more senior. But you basically are playing catch up. You're putting out fires nonstop, so you can never really get ahead, and you can't really move the needle. The weekend comes, you basically get one day of real downtime, and that's Saturday. And then Sunday, you're starting to think again about, oh man, all this stuff I got to do for work. And then drop in TDYs, deployments, your professional military education, other like ancillary ground training events, keeping up with your CBTs, all that kind of stuff. It all compounds to never really being able to get ahead. And I kind of liken it to what we've been doing at TPN is we've always been kind of putting out a fire when, man, wouldn't it be cool if we just started to move the needle to get ahead? That's what the structure, I think, can really do for all of us. So these are how I built these themes, and we looked through a lens of like 4, I guess, core questions. So the first one is what can you do in 12 months that you can't do today? This can be anything. I mean, for me personally, journaling is one that I want to do. I actually bought a journal that's based on the book, The Atomic Habits. And I said, this is because it's really structured and it's really easy. I figured this will push me to do that. And then the second one is something very personal to me is I want to get back into playing guitar. I'm not good at it. I played it for many years, but I'm not good. And my whole family's musical. And I figured, like, my wife is going down another musical road and I can't keep up. My daughter's starting to play piano. I can't keep up with her. The youngest one is starting to sing a lot and sing well. And I'm just kind of left in the dust. And I said, I need to sit down and start playing guitar just to keep up with them in practice. And it would be really fun. It's definitely a bonding moment for our family. Instead of pushing them to try to do the stuff that I want to do, like play golf, this is something that I can do with them. And now that my shoulder's kind of well enough where I can at least pluck a few chords, I can start to work towards something that we can do together and true bonding instead of watching a movie together or whatever. So this is something that I'm really moving towards, and I've got in my little journal as kind of a habit to just sit down and play for just starting with like 5-10 minutes a day is all I need to do to start moving that needle, and it'll grow the more I enjoy it. You know how that works. So the first core question is, what can you do in 12 months that you can't do today? And it's not someday or 5 years down the road. 1 year from now, what's the real thing that you did, that you measured, that you feel like, wow, I really moved the needle on this. And for a lot of us, that's going to be job and job related hunting. For those of us who are in the military and getting ready to transition out of the military, whether it's retirement, separation, what have you, it's, okay, I retire in 18 months. I have nothing done. I'm not ready to go. What is, by the end of this year, what's that going to look like to me? That would be a really good question to ask yourself. I wish I would have done this. If you're like a regional bub and you want to move to the legacies, okay, what can I do in this next year to move that needle? Maybe it's just flight hours. Maybe it's taking a position outside of just flying the line check airman, instructor, something like that, an additional duty. Maybe it's doing something off the flight deck to enhance my resume, an educational piece, whatever it might be that you're doing. You sign up for interview prep, you attend a conference or two, but you plan it out, move the needle on that kind of stuff and measure it. And you don't have to be super specific, right? So I'm not saying anything more. I'm not a wellness guru or one of these like Jesse Itzler planning guys who's amazing, and I love that stuff. But the reality is that's not who I am. I'm just a regular person who's still trying to figure all this stuff out. So I figured, why don't we all challenge each other? What can we do in 12 months that we couldn't do today? So those are my two: is that I've journaled and that I'm playing guitar. Call it my misogi. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically this, I think it's a Japanese tradition or word that basically means you find something that's really hard or difficult for you. And to be honest with you, those two things are extremely challenging to me. Going out and running an ultra marathon, okay, done it. And honestly, I probably will do it again. And I enjoy it because I'm a weirdo. So not hard. These two things, very hard for me to do. And the other thing that I noticed is if I'm going to do this stuff, there's certain things that's going to naturally fold into that because I'm tracking things again, where I'm tracking more than what I've tracked in the past. Okay, second, what would make this next year unforgettable? Call it your best year ever, if you wanted to call it that. It's not necessarily impressive on paper or anything like that to anybody else, but it's unforgettable in your life. That could be getting the job of your dreams. That could be exploring a new field in aviation that you didn't even know existed. It could be finding something that's completely off the flight deck that makes you better when you're at work and off the clock. Figuring out a way to reduce the amount of time that you spend consumed with the job hunt or work, and organizing yourself so you can be more present for your family or yourself and the stuff that you love to do. So we can say what would make the year unforgettable. I think even a better way to say it is, what can make this the best year ever? And how can TPN help do that kind of thing within this new format? Okay, number 3. What does a normal day look like 1 year from now? If the first two things are these introspective pieces in more of the 35,000 foot view, where you're hitting one big thing, or how this new thing you could do in 12 months, or thing that you have or wanted to get to in 12 months that you don't have today, how does that change your normal day in a year? So for me, it would be not feeling like I am having to do hard labor by journaling. Like it's something that I can't live without. Like there's certain things that I do now that I couldn't live with, like in the past would have been tough for me, but now they're so ingrained in my habit pattern and the way I live. Good things like going to the gym or certain stuff like that. I want that to feel like it is. I want those two things, journaling and playing guitar, to be The two things that in a year from now, I have a hard time going a day or two without. So it's kind of another piece to that measurable thing. Again, this is not like a highlight reel or anything like that. It's more of the routine, the day-to-day pace, how your stress levels kind of chill because of this newfound action plan that you have in your life, and how you can do this with a collective. You're not doing this on your own. You're doing this as a collective group of aviation professionals. All right, and the fourth core question is, and this is so specific to TPN, this is why I like this one, is what have you achieved and who have you met? So do your credentials matter? Of course they do, right? We need ATPs and we need this and that, FCC and flying class 1, all this stuff to get these jobs. But what other kind of credentials do we have? Did we go outside of our comfort zone? Did we meet a few new people who could mentor us, or that we could mentor, that we can help bring along or help brought us along? Did we offer value to as many people around as we possibly could, not expecting anything in return, because that's when we get the most back? To me, that is the achievement that we're looking for. And it goes hand in glove with what TPN is all about, and that community that we've built and the networking that we do together and how we grow this thing. So let's drill down to this kind of, if we combine all four of those, so we'll call that the best year ever. Okay, we bring all four. I said that for the second question, but let's make this the best year ever in 2026 framework. How would that look? And how we use those four questions to define something very simple, but also extremely powerful. It's not going to be perfect. It definitely won't be pain-free. I mean, all this stuff starts with a lot of change. There's that theme again. The change that we're going to go through here. And there is risk and pain tolerance that you have to build up and kind of callous yourself to, especially when we're going through the career changes and transitions that we go through consistently, because that stuff's just not that easy. And it does lead to a lot of other stress in our life. So this is a way that we can kind of mitigate that by kind of having a level playing field with all of us able to chat with each other and engage and talk about the things that we're going through. And also just to have accountability by, doing this kind of thing, is saying, Adam did this thing on TPN, maybe I'll pick up one thing, and who knows, that could lead to a lot more out there. And I think a couple examples might help here. So let's do the one. I'll just do two of them that I think are super applicable to our group. So 12 months from now, a year from now, if you're leaving the military, and you are off terminal leave. So terminal leave ends on December 31st. And you're on property starting January 2nd, because I don't think they start class dates on January 1st. And you start to understand how the airline environment training works, not how we all say it works for you. You develop your own perspective and opinion, so you can feed back into that giant loop, so somebody can have at least some idea of what they're getting into before they depart the military. The financial piece is not that troubling to you because you've planned for it. You were able to build up your reservoir or your safety net or whatever you consider it to be throughout that time, because you're doing all this other stuff and it's making you kind of think about that. You're getting inputs outside of just what people are saying in your squadron and what they're saying within like the online communities that we all belong to, even in TPN. And you have to internalize a lot of that. Your logbooks and your apps, your paperwork, we're all clean, obviously, and ready to go sometime in that process because you got the job, and you're starting to know some people at your airline by name because you're sitting in indoc and your friends are there. A couple of your friends are there, or you meet somebody that you get along with who's brand new, and now instead of having your buddies from the squadron, you have your buddy at United or American or wherever you end up, and you realize that though you get a seniority number when you show up, a line number. That it's more than that. That this could be a new group of people. Maybe it's a new group of people in the domicile that you choose to live in, and you start to develop some of those friendships and relationships, so you can grow your community offline, which is what we are trying to always move towards. And you start asking the big question, did I make the right move? Well, I will tell you, you will ask that question until the day that you retire to something from the airlines. But the real key to that is you're building confidence in the fact that you made the right move at the right time and the right decisions, and you did it in a game plan that was executed and not just one that felt like you were putting out a fire the whole time. So that's kind of that's that first military transition to part 121. We'll call it. We'll just call it that, just for round numbers and to make it very easy. Another one, I think we could do. Let's talk about career pivoting. So a lot of guys and gals are in this career pivot. So maybe they're in the low time world, or maybe they're getting ready to retire from the airlines to a dream life where they still want to work, or they've decided that they want to go a different direction. They're transitioning out of the military, but they're pivoting. Instead of going the 121 route that a lot of other people did, they want to go contract work, or they find some consulting stuff that's not necessarily directly flying related. They want to do a desk job, or they want to go fly test for some company, whatever the case might be, but that career pivot. And a year from now, let's say you just got this new gig, or you're just moving into this world. So you can take a lot of what I said from that first kind of example, but this career pivot is you're starting to stabilize your identity as a pilot, not your identity as a person. I am not one of those who links my job with my identity. And your pilot identity and your persona can be, in my mind, should be different, but that's up to you to decide. So you're starting to stabilize that pilot identity again. This is a big move, especially for pivoting from something that could be high paying that you didn't enjoy to something that maybe is starting over again or starting out in a different way. Even a pivot could be as simple as you were flying at Delta for 2 years and you realized that your seniority wasn't moving, or whatever the case is, and you pivoted and you took a job at United or Southwest and you're starting over again. So you have to stabilize that identity. And you start to understand the operation that you're now currently working within. You've had some time to kind of deal with how things are different and what you like and what you maybe would like to change and make better. You know how to do those things that are intrinsic to the new place, starting to learn how to do them intelligently. It's not so much of a stress or as it is something that's become part of your routine. You're starting to have a rhythm at home and at work. This applies to the first one too. I kind of forgot to mention that. In that you're starting to know, like, okay, this is how we operate, and this is what I'm going to do. And all that training stress and everything else is behind you. And you have found mentors within that group. And even for those who are 65, leaving part 121 and are going to something totally different, finding a mentor within that world is great. I mean, you're never too old to have somebody teach you something, whether they're the young or the old. They can teach us so much, as I talked about in the very beginning. And you're able to avoid a lot of those common new early career mistakes that we made, all of us did back when we first started flying airplanes, whether it's in the jet or airplane or outside of the cockpit, where you're able to kind of make decisions based on your experience and knowledge, but also what you've gained from just making this career pivot and jump. You're no longer the new person on property. You're kind of in your own head anyways. You're kind of, you've been there. You people know who you are, and that confidence is showing up at work and then again at home. And the excitement might have worn off, but now you're excited to be at kind of a new phase within that world. So those are just two little examples. I mean, we could go through a bunch more, but I think you get what I'm going at, and I don't want to ramble on any more than I already have. So this is what we're talking about when we say that kind of the best year ever. And why all of this matters is these 4 core questions and some of the stuff I've talked about are not your goals. They're a framework for you to build your own goals and to use TPN as a resource for you to get out there and accomplish whatever it is, professionally or otherwise, that you wanted to do. Bounce ideas off one another so you can avoid that friction and make the transition and the changes that we're all going to face a little easier. These are the anchors that you can attach yourself to and have built a foundation on. So I hope this gives you some context to what we're doing with these themes and how we're going to organize the progress that we're all going to make in 2026. I'll chime in with my progress here and there, what I'm doing. And if you find that interesting, cool. If you don't, you can let me know at heyguys@thepilotnetwork.com. And with everything else, you can always let us know anything at heyguys@thepilotnetwork.com. Anyways, I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I hope for the best for the network as a collective, health, success, and a little bit of fun dropped in there as well. Anyways, as I have said for so many times and will continue to say so many times in the future, keep the shiny side up, the greasy side down. Fly safe, everybody.